And we're back. All right, so last thing we talked about was Queen Victoria. She becomes the new Queen of England, and now we're going to see some reforms starting to shape up. Now, keep in mind, all right, when we say reform to the lower classes, that can take on many different shapes and sizes. There were many people in the 19th century that said, look, the poor need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, okay? If they want to be not poor, they need to mimic the values, they need to mimic the behaviors of the upper middle class. You need to practice thrift and sobriety. If you don't do those things, you're always going to be poor. While on the other hand, there's going to be people that say, look, the poor a lot of times are poor because of the situation they're put in. No matter what they try to do on their own, they're never going to get themselves out of poverty. So maybe governmental action, and with the government helping out, that would be the better choice to go. And we're going to see they'll do both. Also, in terms of ideology, we're going to see that there will be reforms under the ideology of what's called utilitarianism. Okay? Now, I'm going to throw, that's a big word, let's kind of look at it. Utilitarianism, it's an ideology created by Jeremy Bentham. Okay? And what it says is that really you want to do the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. Okay? So whatever political practice you put forward, or whatever law you put forward, or whatever social policy you put forward, you want to get the biggest bang for the buck. You want to do the greatest good for the greatest amount of people. And that can be anything from infrastructure to, with Jeremy Bentham, he really studied was prison systems. Okay, with Jeremy Bentham in the prison systems, he says that, look, your punishment can't always be like kill people. It can't always be capital punishment, all right? Because it's not really reducing crime. So he comes up with new ideas of prison systems, new ideas of jails, and during his lifetime, we don't really see a big change, but later on, the idea of everybody gets their own cell. There's more light and air coming into the cells. That kind of becomes the norm, okay? Also, the government will sponsor studies to investigate what's going on in the cities. They need to know, it's like, hey, if the cities are this bad, we need to fix them, but what do we have to do to fix them, okay? So we're going to see that, really it's urban planning. They say that, all right, look, if we fix the sewage systems, if we take all the nasty stuff out, whether it's human waste, whether it's animal waste, whether it's rotted food, if we have a system that takes all of that out, okay, also included trash pickup, and we have more fresh water coming in, that will eliminate most of our problems. And to be honest, like the upper class and the industrial middle class, they were on board with this. They say, hey, look, we'll raise taxes. That's fine. We'll raise taxes. We'll pay for this infrastructure. Not because they want to get rid of all their money. It's because they know that if the poor gets cholera, or if the poor gets some kind of communicable disease, it's only a matter of time before they get it too. So let's fix these problems in infrastructure. So they do, all right? We also see social investigations in terms of child labor. Children at one point were working all the way up to 16, 14 hours a day. Even very, very young children under the age of 7 were working like 12 hours a day. And obviously that's not the direction we're going to go, or you probably want to go. All right, so we're going to see there's a lot of government action later on in the 19th century that limits the amount of time that children can work and even women can work, okay? Now, that being said, politically, this is the big one I want you to know. The industrial middle class, now keep in mind, industrial middle class, these are the business owners, okay? These are the people that are typically pretty wealthy. It's just that they're not aristocracy. They resent the fact that they are not represented in Parliament. And they're like, dude, wait a minute, I've got just as much money as that aristocrat over there, yet I don't have a say in Parliament and I'm getting hosed over. Not cool, man. So, they want their piece of the pie. They want to get represented. Now, do not confuse this with democracy. These people do not want democracy. It's very much like the bourgeoisie in France. They want their cut, but they don't want everybody voting. That would be insanity. They just want them represented as well. So, the big one. We're going to have what's called the Reform Bill of 1832. And look, this is a pretty big turning point, okay? And you can judge it later. But with the Reform Bill of 1832, that industrial middle class is going to be represented in Parliament, okay? They are going to reorganize what areas get represented and how much representation they get in Parliament, and it allows these guys to vote. Okay? Now you have to understand, previous to this, only about 1.5% of the people of England were actually represented in Parliament. Now it doubles to like 3%. All right? So more people are voting, but still overwhelmingly the people in England are not represented in Parliament. But just give it time. All right? You just got to give it time. All right? You got to take that small step. Okay? In terms of economics, definitely there is going to be a push towards economic liberalism. There is a push towards free trade and laissez-faire governments, okay? We're going to see that in 1830, the Tories are going to get voted out. And they'll repeal the Corn Law. They'll repeal those tariffs on foreign grain. Remember, like if it's economic liberalism, typically you can't have tariffs. Tariffs is the government getting involved in the economy. So they repeal the Corn Law of 1815, okay? So that does lower the price of food, okay? You do have political philosophers like John Stuart Mill in the 19th century England, okay? Now, John Stuart Mill, I'm really not doing him justice right now, but his big thing is liberalism, okay? He said that really, in order for man to be most free and most productive, like the government can't tell him what to do. All right, you should place as little restrictions on man as possible. Okay, and it's not even governmental restrictions. A lot of times it's like restrictions with social conformity. All right, so if man is truly to be free, they cannot have oppressive governments dictating his will. Also, one of the big things, and it's not on liberty, it's another book he actually writes with his wife, is that he's advocating for women to be able to vote. Which, keep in mind, in the mid-19th century, that's just crazy talk. Okay? All right, so that being said, 1867, we will see another reform bill is passed. Now, keep in mind, every time we're saying the reform bill of whatever, it means more people are going to vote. Okay? So, with the Reform Bill of 1867 in England, we are going to again lower property qualifications for voting. So now more people are going to vote. But keep in mind, you still have to have property, you still have to be a man. Okay? So it lowers property qualifications and it doubles again the amount of people that can vote. So now we're at a really strong 6 to 7%. Okay? But keep in mind, it's more important the momentum of what's happening, all right? Because really by, so one other thing with 1867, they do allow for unions, okay? So workers are only going to get more powerful in England at this time, okay? Now, one last thing. By 1890, we essentially have universal male suffrage. So it's happening over time. It doesn't happen all at once, but it happens gradually and it happens over time. So like I said, by 1890, most men are gonna have the right to vote regardless of property. Okay? All right, now, we are done with England. The next video, we're gonna be talking about 19th century Europe, but it's gonna be talking about France.